Hey everybody, Livingston here. Today we're jumping into another fun-filled episode of the Twilight Zone. This time it's Season 3, Episode 4, The Passerby. Came on October 6, 1961. And it's another episode I haven't seen before. But before we get started, let's jump into your comments and see what you have to say about the Twilight Zone, Episode 3, Season 3, The Shelter. Christian NWO says, I love the Twilight Zone. Keep up the Twilight Zone reactions. Years ago, I wrote down my top 10 Twilight Zone episodes. Number 10, Nightmare as a Child. Number 9, The Trade-Ins. 8, Walking Distance. 7, Number 12, Looks Just Like You. 6, Miniature. 5, On Thursday We Leave for Home. 4, The Self-Improvement of Salvador Ross. 3, A Game of Pool. 2, Uncle Simon. And 1, Nothing in the Dark. I don't think I've seen the majority of these episodes. I think they're episodes that come out after Season 2. So everything Season 3 is up seems to be what you are into, so I'm looking forward to jumping into those seasons and seeing what there is improvement-wise in terms of how they are better when it comes to comparing them to Season 1 and 2. Greg number 5 says, crazy thing at the end of the episode, the one neighbor says, let's have a party, like they've learned nothing from what had happened. As far as Twilight Zone reboots, I like the 80s, Twilight Zone the best, but even that series is 50-50 hit or miss. The series Black Mirror on Netflix does a better job telling stories using future technology as a plot point to examine human behavior. I've actually watched a few episodes of Black Mirror. I gotta say, I do enjoy a lot of them that they have. Very much more technological in terms of story, more modernized. Actually, it hits a little closer to home in some respects, but yeah, looking forward to jumping into the 80s version of it. I did see maybe 1 or 2 episodes of the early 2000s Twilight Zone that they had. I do remember that. And I do remember the episode fondly. I think it was the first episode, which kind of related with dealing with the killing Hitler. It's basically what it was. But awesome to see that 80s is probably next in line when it comes to the best Twilight Zone other than the classic. So going to be a while before I hit that, but am looking forward to it nonetheless. Empire Jeff says, this episode has no science fiction elements. Very true. It's actually something that could happen in reality. Only one other episode that I know of is something that could potentially be relatable to this episode, and it's that one in Season 2 with the guy making the bet, and he ends up cutting his umbilical cord so he doesn't break that bet. So it's 2 episodes so far amongst the, dozens that we've watched that doesn't really follow the same sort of map that the other episodes do in terms of it being non-reality or something that can't really happen in this reality. Not yet, anyway. That's why it's science fiction. 100 years ago, or I should say more than that now, 130, 150 years ago, they were speculating about flying machines. Actually, they were doing that several hundred years ago, and no one thought it was possible, and then boom, it became a reality. It's something, some of these episodes probably aren't something that we think about being a possibility, like visiting aliens or aliens visiting us, but who's to say in 100 to 500 years we won't have that as a possibility. Richard Chase 2960 says, love this episode. I think it's a better version of Maple Street. Yeah, I did bring up Maple Street in the last episode when I was actually watching it, saying that it's very much a comparison to that episode. But yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think this is a better version of that scenario, with people surviving some kind of apocalyptic thing. This was more so apocalyptic in that there were nuclear bombs involved, and the other one, it was just a loss of power, no news about it. Everybody was at a loss, and they didn't know what to make of it. So, yeah, it was a little more, out there in terms of, because I think aliens were involved. If I'm not correct, if I'm correct on that, I can't get my words out. But yeah, I would say this is probably a better, more superior episode than that one of Maple Street. RSEFX says, such a powerful episode. It is a very powerful episode. Any episode that makes you question humanity in any way, or makes you think about what would you do in that situation, it's got to be one of those episodes that are up there and ranks very high. This episode makes you wonder, would you be that good person that would let them into your cellar, or would you be that bad person who's wanting to kill and do anything possible to survive yourself and your family? But, we don't know until we're actually stuck in those situations, and hopefully we're never in that situation. Reign Supreme says, have loved the Twilight Zone original series for years and still quote from different episodes from time to time. From the writing, directing, acting, set, costume, lighting, sound design, and cinematography, there is so much to love about this show. For me, I love the relevance, and its influence remains regardless of how many years removed we are from the original air date. Yeah, I've said it a few times in the past myself, where I'm watching these episodes and state that it's very much something that could happen in the present, and it's things that are still in the equation of people's discussions when it comes to movies or even modernized television shows. It takes a lot from this actual show that came out like 60 years ago, and it's crazy that it's still so relevant today. But yeah, totally agree with you, and I am loving this series. Probably one of the best series ever created, in my opinion. Charles Stewart 8009 says, growing up in the 60s, I had a friend whose parents built a bomb shelter in their basement. I remember shelves full of canned goods. Well, it was a crazy time back then. You had the Soviet Union and America basically in a Cold War at the time, and you had the Cuban Missile Crisis going on as well. So didn't know exactly what was going to happen back then with the two rival nations at each other's throat. And yeah, I mean, it kind of strikes me funny now looking back at some of those how-to videos or what they did in school when it had kids going up underneath the desks to hide from the nuclear bombs that could potentially go off. Sorry, but if a nuclear bomb is going off, that desk ain't helping. So it's pretty crazy to think about where we were 60 years ago compared to today. But yeah, that's just how the world was back then, I suppose. And luckily I was born in the 80s and I didn't have to go through that. And hopefully I don't have to ever go through that. P Sparks 3419 says, awesome episode. You can learn a lot about a person's character when you see them face their own mortality. Very true. This episode really makes you look at things in a different light sometimes when you watch episodes like this and make you think what would happen in that situation if you were stuck in it. And yeah, I mean, some people turn into their worst nightmares. Other people turn into better people. But we just don't know until it actually happens. Akira Kurosawa says, gotta reinforce that door. Yeah, slightly. I can't believe they made it so thin. I mean, if it took only like 5 or 6 people to knock it down with a wood or a steel pipe, a nuclear bomb would be nothing to it. So kind of crazy that somebody did a horrible job with their shelter. Gene Everett, sometimes these episodes with no supernatural twist are the best ones. I think there's 6 or 7 that don't add in a sci-fi supernatural element, and that human nature plot can be just as scary. The Passerby next week is not a common favorite, but I actually like it a lot. Well, we're about to jump into The Passerby, so looking forward to jumping into it. But yeah, no supernatural stuff in this episode, and it's awesome to see that every so often humanity can be one scary thing for sure. California Hummus says, on The Simpsons, Ned Flanders let the whole town of Springfield into the shelter. Then he went outside so everybody else would fit inside. Yeah, I do remember that episode. It's been a long time since I actually sat down and watched The Simpsons episode. I watched every episode from the first season all the way up to maybe season 12 or 13, and now we're past season 30. I got a lot of catching up to do if I ever want to, but yeah, I've caught The Simpsons here and there, so I have seen a scattering of episodes of The Simpsons, but yeah, it's crazy how long that the show's been going. Yeah, Ned Flanders was just too nice of a guy. That's all I gotta say. Nene's hubby says, way too much to unpack here. The occasionally hypocrisy of American suburbia, Cold War paranoia, the fact people actually thought these flimsy shelters would protect them, local family doctors who still made house calls. Obviously today it would be quite tame, but back in the early 60s, in the era of I Love Lucy, Leave It to Beaver, and Father Knows Best, nobody was exploring these types of subjects on network television. Rod Serling was so far ahead of his time. Very true, Rod Serling was so much ahead of his time, and I do appreciate a lot of the work that he has done in this one TV series talking about political things that could potentially go wrong for humankind in the future when nobody else was actually discussing it, such as this episode of what people might be like and what the morality of human beings could potentially be in terms of where we might end up in a situation such as the apocalypse. But I gotta say, Rod Serling was definitely ahead of the game. Robert Jewell 9727 says, definitely a good episode, bears a lot of similarity to The Monsters Are Out on Maple Street. Both written by Rod Serling, he had a definite interest in writing about how people react to precarious situations rather than only the events causing them, and how their true natures become apparent in an otherwise seemingly stable community. Yeah, Rod Serling did a lot of that, where he was writing situations for a group of people that they had to deal with some circumstance that put them in these moral dilemmas. So I'm looking forward to seeing what other episodes Rod Serling is going to be giving us into the future episodes that I haven't watched yet. Jonathan Stein says, one of the few episodes with no sci-fi or supernatural elements, which I feel just makes it all the more effective at getting its message across. Yep, very true. We did go over that earlier, and very well, like as they said in an earlier comment, like there's only been 6 or 7 episodes that kind of discuss things from a non-sci-fi or supernatural view. Orson Buggy 1958 says, I hope he put a toilet in his shelter. That would be a long 2 weeks without one. Very true. At least put a bucket. I mean, what are you going to do? Anyways, everybody, thank you for the comments. Looking forward to what you have to say about this week's episode, The Passerby. Let's jump into it.
The Twilight Zone.
It's like it's a Western.
This road is the afterwards of the Civil War. It's littered with the residue of broken battles and shattered dreams.
Like most end of the wars are. Her house is done.
Do you mind if I have myself some of your water, man?
Oh, please.
Thank you.
Beautiful once, wasn't it?
Yep.
3, I mean, ma'am.
Once it was. Very beautiful.
Before the war.
Ma'am, would you mind if I sat here for a spell the rest of the bit?
Not at all. Oh.
You're welcome. I didn't say you can play guitar.
Mind if I strum a few chords on my gitbox here?
Oh, at least he asked.
My husband used to play the guitar.
Ah, did he now?
Where's he at? Is he dead?
And he's, now, where is he, man?
He was killed.
Oh, great.
A Yellow Tavern with General Stewart.
I'm sorry.
Gold braid. And 1,000 flags. Trumpets and drums. Nothing but trumpets and drums. Beat the Yanks in a month. That's what they said. And we stood by in our summer dresses and cheered them on. And it felt so grand. Not many tears. Just a few. How wrong we were. Oh.
Uh-oh.
I'm on the mend now. It's left me a little weak, that's all.
Huh.
Morning and night. Night and morning they walk down that road. The young ones and the old ones. How tired. Wouldn't you think that with so many, my Judd might be amongst them?
Was this going to be a supernatural thing?
Would you do me a favor?
Why, sure if I can, ma'am.
Would you play your guitar real loud? I'm so sick to death to hear my own crying and the sound of footsteps on the road.
Do what she says.
As you wish, Willie. Black is the color of my true love's the purest.
What's up, Rod?
In just a moment, you will enter a strange province that knows neither north nor south. A place we call
The Twilight Zone. It was a long intro.
Charlie Constable!
What?
We thought you'd been killed. That's what everyone said. They said you'd been shot in the head at Gettysburg. I'm so glad you're all right.
What the heck's wrong with him?
Oh, your wife will be so glad to see you. So very, very glad.
I'll leave it here.
Oh, Charlie.
Keep going. Goodbye.
Where are you going?
Would Judd come home to me? I'd hold him close, so close. I'd not let him leave again.
I'm sure, Lavinia.
Boy, he's friendly.
That was Charlie Constable. They said he had been killed in Gettysburg, shot through the head.
He probably is dead. Or maybe they're all dead.
What's wrong, ma'am?
There's blood on his cap.
Twist.
I got a feeling for wood, you know, whether it's chopping it or carving it or wiring it. See this?
Oh.
Made that myself. Of course, it's not as good as the one I got at home. I had more time then, you understand? I remember my daddy used to say to me, you're gonna wind up nothing but a good-for-nothing troubadour. I can see him now. He used to look at me, his face all squinted up like a persimmon. He'd stick his finger in my mouth. Have you got nothing inside you but soft mush and sad ballads? Ain't you ever gonna grow up and become a man? He's just proud as no rooster, you know. There was his son marching off to war to become a man.
You know that song of yours?
Black is the color of my true love's hair. A certain wondrous spell
My husband, he used to sing that song.
I feel like she's going to see her husband at some point.
Wish you could have met him. He was a very gentle man.
Are we going to see him on the road?
I can remember nights while he'd sit here on this very porch. Even the crickets would keep quiet.
I bet you they did, too.
And the bullfrogs down at the pond, it was just as if it stopped their noise so they could hear the music.
Or is the music so loud you just couldn't hear him?
Why don't you go away from here? This place's no good for you.
Yep, I agree.
Now, this place is all I have. What do you suppose happened to that Yankee who killed my husband? Do you suppose he's marching home to his own kin now?
Probably.
Telling all his neighborhood about the rebels he's killed?
No, ma'am, I don't reckon anything like that at all. You let that kind of poison set on your mind, you'll die from it, ma'am.
I can't really blame the opposite side unless you're talking about, the Nazis or something. But when it comes to war, like Civil War, it's a fight of belief, mostly between the people running the war.
Some moment a Yankee is going to come by here, and I'm going to take out that gun and I'm going to aim it at him.
And both are basically playing self-defense. It's either kill or be killed in war. It's sad to say, nobody should die for having a different mindset over things. But I do agree the South were definitely in the wrong during this war, but there are a lot of people who went to war in the Civil War that weren't about it or were going to war for other reasons, but the main reason was the slavery part of it all.
Who's that? Hello? Yes? It seems to me that I know you. We met somewhere.
Go on. What is it that you remember?
A shell had just exploded amongst us, tore off half my foot. You, Lieutenant, you came by with a patrol of Yankees, and you stopped there. You took care of me. You stopped the bleeding.
I remember that.
Lieutenant, I'd like for you to meet the lady of the house. Ma'am, ma'am.
What the hell?
You best pay heed to the sergeant's gratitude, because it's the last gift you'll ever get.
Let me have that gun, ma'am.
What's the deal?
And you'd best get on with it.
Lieutenant here tried to save my life.
You've thanked him, Sergeant.
Yeah, I think he's not alive.
I couldn't have missed you.
Man, they're not scouting. Now I remember they got you that day, Lieutenant.
No, he's just the guy that died, too.
This hot steel went spraying all over the place. I remember you standing up and clawing at your eyes and screaming, I'm blind, I'm blind.
That's why you don't see his eyes.
I remember thinking they killed you. I remember thinking that you were dead.
That water from the well.
Certainly, Lieutenant.
Well, rule of three, this is the second person they've talked to on the road. Who are the third? Will it be your husband? Whoa!
I wish you the best, ma'am. And you, sir. And this too shall pass. Wait and see.
I'm just curious, are these people also dead?
Miss Godwin, morning, ma'am. You come down for a minute?
Is he leaving?
I've come to say goodbye and just thank you for your hospitality, but
Well, I can tell you where that road leads. It's burned out houses and burned out roads.
You see, Miss Godwin, I was up most of the night last night, and I was thinking about a lot of things.
Come with me.
Well, that blind lieutenant and your young friend, Constable, the blood on his hat. And then sometime during the night, they stopped coming, and it got quiet on the road there. It got real quiet.
Who?
Just before dawn, it come to me.
What did?
Spill it.
I don't know just how to explain it to you, ma'am, but it's got to do with that road out there and those men moving down. There was Union soldiers too, ma'am, Yankees. All of them moving down that road together, just as if...
It didn't matter what side they were on.
But there's something down the end of that road, and I gotta find out what it is. I wish you well. I most certainly wish you well.
Sergeant, I'd be alone.
I don't think she wants to move on, and that's her problem.
What do you think you'll find at the end of that road? A new South, perhaps? A new Confederacy born out of the ashes?
Who is that? Is that your husband?
Judd!
Called it.
How fares my wife?
I've been ill, Judd. I've been very ill.
Where's his? She died from an illness.
This was home, Lavinia. It isn't any longer.
We can paint and we can plow the fields and we can buy seed. What's the matter, Judd?
We're dead.
You know. I think I do. I'm not sure, but I think I do. No doubt at all I'll be seeing you again, Tom. At the end of that road.
She was just waiting for her husband. She wasn't able to move on until he came back, dead or alive.
What's happened?
Your life, Lavinia.
is kind of like a song, right to the end. And when the notes are finished, there's only silence. And that's when you move on.
Are we dead?
Yeah.
Yes, my darling, like all those men on the road.
I'm alive, and I don't want to leave here.
I'm not leaving you, my darling. I'll wait for you. I'll meet you at the end of the road. I'll wait for you.
John, come back to me!
Wow. She still can't move on. Abe, he was shot too. I didn't know Abe was going to make an appearance.
Staying behind, my dear?
Mr. President.
I'm afraid.
Of course you are. And I am too. Of all the wonders that I yet have heard, that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it'll come. That's from Shakespeare. Julius Caesar. I'm dead too. I guess you might say I'm the last casualty of the Civil War. And I'm the last man on this road.
Go to your husband. There you go.
John!
Incident on a dirt road, the year 1865. It's a road that won't be found on a map, but it's one of many that lead in and out of the Twilight Zone.
Well, Gene Everett 33, I got to say, that was a good episode in my opinion as well. I enjoyed it. I kind of figured out what was going on about halfway through, but, I didn't think to see that Abraham Lincoln was going to make an appearance in this episode, but it was cool that he did. He was the last person to basically die that was a part of the Civil War in a lot of ways. He was the last casualty, as he stated. And I actually looked at Abraham Lincoln, the way he spoke was very much like the way Daniel Day-Lewis spoke in Lincoln, and he read some things where Abraham Lincoln was very soft-spoken, and he spoke a little lighter, unlike some people who have played Lincoln in the past, where he speaks more, deep and, a little more with gravitas, I guess, like a James Earl Jones or something, and not every leader has to have a deep voice, and this guy seemed to do his homework in terms of how Abraham Lincoln spoke, so that was pretty cool. Plus, he looked a lot like him. I really enjoyed the story as a whole. I mean, I didn't know exactly that everybody was dead right off the bat, but when people were walking by and then you come to realize that her neighbor or somebody that she knew was walking toward something and wanted to get down to the end of the road and just would not give her the time of day. Then you see that the house that she's in is all burnt up and everything, and you start putting two and two together where it's like she's already dead. She just doesn't realize it yet, and she was just there waiting for her husband. That was her whole point of basically sticking around, like ghosts that need a reason to stick around. And it's typically because they have like unfinished business, and she definitely did, waiting for her husband. And then you have this random guy finally show up and want to drink something out of the well and has a discussion with her before and has, reminders of her husband. But yeah, very good episode in relating to death and how we kind of look at certain things in terms of letting go and moving on from the things that we know of and going towards what might give us a lot of fear in our lives, and sometimes going forward and not looking back is the best way of going and walking away to maybe a better tomorrow, as they say. But of course, in this episode, it's all about death and walking towards the light in some respect. But let's jump into some trivia and see what it took to get this episode off the ground. The Battle of Yellow Tavern took place in May 1864 near Richmond, Virginia. Union cavalry under Major General Phil Sheridan outnumbered and outgunned Confederate cavalry leader by Major General Jeb Stuart, who was mortally wounded and died the next day. Originally aired 100 years after the beginning of the American Civil War, 1861. Another Twilight Zone featuring multiple actors from Star Trek. James Gregory portrayed Dr. Tristan Adams in Season 1's Dagger of the Mind. Joanne Linville was the Romulan commander in the Enterprise incident, and Rex Holman played Morgan Earp, Inspector of the Gun, both from Season 3. In addition, Rex Holman later appeared in Star Trek V, The Final Frontier as John. President Abraham Lincoln quotes the following line from Julius Caesar, Act 2, Scene 2. Of all the wonders that I have yet heard, it seems to me most strange that men should fear, seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. The same line was quoted by Jeremy Wheaton in Twilight Zone, Rod Serling's Lost Classics, another story set in the aftermath of American Civil War written by Rod Serling. James Gregory wore his CSA belt buckle upside down as an obscure way to give away the ending that he and all other are dead. Didn't notice that. Austin Green previously played President Abraham Lincoln in Black Friday, 1955. The twist ending was borrowed on MASH, 1972, and Follies of the Living, Concerns the Dead, in which Klinger is sick with fever, but the only one who can talk to Private Weston, who later walks down a similar road, Farr, had a quick cameo here. Oh, that's cool. Well, that's it for this episode. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to continue on this voyage to episode 156 of The Twilight Zone. Until next time, see you later.